So, as owner of a business, I've got to start my presentation with some market research, which is who's heard of Woo Themes? Okay, who's actually used Woo Themes? Free, paid. Awesome. Okay, so I'm always the business guy when it comes to these kind of things, because back in the day I pretended to be all techie and I pretended that I can design. I actually pretended I can code as well. Load of crap, all of it. So these days I'm the business guy, right? And so my take on WordPress and the community, or whatever you want to call it, is a little different. And in the last couple of months, in my head, I've kind of created this perception, or not perception, concept more, that where I see WordPress as being more of an ecosystem, more of an economy in its own right, where if you look at the internet as a whole, then you've got WordPress, and it's a little pocket of a whole different, bunch of different things. So what I did is I pulled up a little spiffy definition of ecosystem there. And what is important there is not the whole thing, but it's basically the phrase is interacting organisms and their physical environment. If you then pull up the definition for economy, and you pull out what's important there, production, consumption, so supply and demand, and then goods and services. And this kind of resonated with the concept that I had of WordPress as being something, not a platform, not a piece of software, not open source, not the people that's involved, but all of that as a whole. And the concept of all these different things interacting, different interacting organisms within this physical structure. Sure, it's not physical, it's virtual, and it's physical in a conference like this where we've got structure, but it's mostly open. But there's still some kind of, WordPress has kind of set these boundaries at least. So this is how I see the WordPress ecosystem. Now, you'll see up top there, I say this is a kind of traditional view, because I've also got an alternative view to this. And just before I get into this, I just want to explain that this whole concept kind of, well, I wouldn't say has come to me in a dream or something like that, but it's something that I've developed in the last, I think I've been selling themes for about 5 years now, since the very first theme that I put out there. So I've kind of been there, done that. Woo Themes, currently we have 40,000 plus paying users. We've had our free themes that has had more than 800,000 downloads. So that is what this is based on. It's not just me actually thumb-sucking. It's actually me being involved in running a business and kind of seeing where the gaps are, where the opportunities are. So this is my view of the WordPress ecosystem. So a very large chunk, so all of these slides, you'll see these spiffy little circles, WordPress being the big grey one, right? So the biggest chunk of that, I think, is any kind of custom services that is provided within this ecosystem. Back in the day when WordPress started to become popular, loads of people started to designers, developers started to learn WordPress, and they started providing custom design development services. I think these days that now stretches to marketing agencies, where marketing agencies sell people on using WordPress as a blog to give them social media and online presence. I know specific SEO services to WordPress, all of those kind of things. So a large chunk of what happens within this ecosystem still relies on agencies and freelancers providing these custom solutions. I also think that it's kind of, if I had to compare services versus products within the WordPress community, kind of 80-20, where most of the money is currently still in services. That said, I don't necessarily want to be involved in services. I'm more than happy to do product, but that is still by and large the biggest chunk of this ecosystem. Then there's the one that we all know, which is the theme side to it. I think back in the day when WordPress was still new, I think themes was the kind of lowest hanging fruit within the WordPress community. That's what people were using at that stage. I also think, just by the way, this is just an opinion of mine, I think the reason why WordPress became popular so quickly is because it has always had this major focus on theming. and building a templating engine as a result. I think if you look at similar CMSs, Drupal, Joomla, Expression Engine, none of them have the kind of templating engines and flexibility that WordPress offers. And sure, WordPress has grown up a lot in the last few years, but I can remember when I taught myself WordPress 5 years ago, that was the part that was actually easy, is the templating, compared to the other things. So that said, I think with that focus, it meant that there was a ready-made market when myself, guys like Brian Gardner at Studio Press, we started selling themes because we could see that people were already downloading a bunch of free themes. So we didn't need to validate some different markets. There was a market there. We also knew that WordPress was pretty mature, so in terms of templating engine, at least back then. So very much the kind of lowest hanging fruit. And to this day, I think if people think of doing products for WordPress, themes are kind of the first thing that popped to their head because there are so many people doing it, because it has had so much publicity around it. A couple of other things, though, which I think are interesting. We've recently seen that plugins have become really popular. Gravity Forms, if anyone hasn't used it, I can't imagine ever putting up a site without Gravity Forms anymore. I think what the guys have done is they've revolutionized the kind of plugin business. Big fans of their branding, their model, everything. Wishlist member, never used it myself. A lot of our users at Woo Themes uses it. Similarly, I mean, it's just a professional outfit providing, I wouldn't say a simple plugin, but a plugin that focuses on doing a couple of things really well. The guys got a shout out to fellow South African brothers. Obox Mobile, similarly. It's a sexy solution that does a couple of things really well and it monetizes. So what we're seeing is not as big as themes, but plugins within this ecosystem is really becoming more and more popular, especially commercial plugins. I think if you have considered doing commercial plugin of any kind in the past, your biggest challenge is fighting against the vast majority of free plugins that are available. I think it's sometimes difficult releasing a plugin and charging for it when you've got such an incredible amount of amazing free plugins available. I do, however, see that kind of shift within the WordPress community or ecosystem where people are buying into support and not necessarily feature sets. So that kind of trend means that plugins and premium plugins with premium support is going to probably maybe become more of a hot topic in the next couple of months. So I suspect that kind of part of the ecosystem is just about starting to grow now. Again, based on the success that guys like Gravity Forms, Wishlist, those guys have had in that space. Something very interesting to me is the concept of SaaS, software as a service, within the WordPress ecosystem. VaultPress has done really well for themselves, and so just the way I define SaaS within the WordPress ecosystem is it will probably always need some kind of a plugin if you can't use XML RPC. See, I actually know that because Jeff told me. He taught me something. It will probably still, you need to use XML RPC. That may be limited in some instances, which means you will need some kind of a plugin to interface with whatever hosted service you are creating. But there is that scope to do that. This, for me, amazing example of doing just that, providing backup and security. Plugs into your WordPress installation. They charge you a monthly fee. Perfect online model. Similarly, I know the guys at OnSwipe. I don't know whether you've actually encountered this. If you're on WordPress.com, apparently this is installed by default or available by default now. These guys are going to revolutionize like tablet viewing of WordPress in the next couple of months. I know for a fact that they are very ambitious. It's a hosted service. The templating engine resides on their side. So again, difference to kind of selling something that your customer is installing. Because therein lies the challenge. So for us, selling themes, selling something that is a hosted installation, you are dealing with sometimes people that aren't that technical. So even a concept like FTPing a bunch of files onto a server is really hard. Obviously, if you've got a hosted platform of some sort that does that for your customer, you kind of avoid that and you open up the scope of what you're selling. Not just not just focusing on the more tech savvy of customers, making it easier also for a much broader spectrum of people. Again, this is something, SaaS is something that excites me. Not something that I'd necessarily get involved with, involved in this stage, but something where for me, this is kind of the space happening, and no one is really stepping up and doing something revolutionary in that space. Hosting specifically, just on WordPress.com's VIP hosting, heard earlier in the conversation, which I didn't know that this is invite only, by the way. I know that multiple $1,000s a month you actually pay to be on this. WP Engine, they start at $50 a month, pretty pricey in terms of hosting. I know both of those companies are doing really well. I see RSA Web locally are marketing WordPress-specific hosting packages. So what that says to me is that WordPress has become such a major component of what we know about the internet today that hosting providers are targeting specifically those users. It's like saying that a manufacturer of shoelaces are going to target a specific brand of Adidas shoes because there's enough Adidas customers out there to actually warrant that. I mean, the mechanics involved for a hosting company to launch and say, WP Engine, we are only WordPress. That is significant. It means that there are a lot of users out there that you can actually sell to. So, that's my next slide. So that's kind of, looks funky, right? Alien. It's because I had to do the slides myself, that's why it looks like that. So basically what I'm trying to say is, even with all of those things, some of those components that I mentioned are underdeveloped. I don't think there's enough hosting providers out there targeting specifically WordPress users. I don't think that there are much in terms of SaaS solutions out there. And it just seems there's all these people that you could be selling to, and you're not. I think for me, and I'm also doing this because I don't want competition, but getting into the themes business, for example, is incredibly tough. Not because any of the companies that are out there are necessarily great, but because if there's an established company, they've got a marketing budget. So unless you can kind of market your way into and get some traction, or you reinvent the wheel and really innovate, it's going to be really tough. So my opinion as entrepreneurs, it's like saying the next big WordThemes project is going to be a competitor to Windows 8. We feel we've really got it. It's like bullshit, Adii. I mean, there's no way that I can outmarket Microsoft in terms of selling that. I'm not saying don't go up against the big guys. What I'm saying is there's all that other opportunities that you are potentially missing. All those opportunities where you could be the first mover, where you don't need to go up against the bigger guys. So kind of just lower hanging fruit. Do I have the ideas to fill those gaps? Not necessarily. But I think with a bit of research and just talking to a bunch of people, I think it would have been, I've been in this track all day. I would have probably been beneficial for me and my business if I was in the other track where I dealt with less tech-savvy people and kind of figured out what their problems were with regards to WordPress. Figure out how I could potentially solve it through a theme, through a plugin, through a hosted solution. Just saying. I mean, that for me, WordPress represents a smaller view of the internet where we see all those different kind of things already happening. We see a new web app, we see a new social network pop up every single day. That's not necessarily the case within WordPress, even though it's still representative of the bigger picture, which is the internet. So that's my kind of traditional view. Then I've got an alternative view, which I think, and this is actually a bigger invite that I'd like to extend to you. So what I've done there is I've just put a few different theme companies in there, plugin companies. So if you consider that within the WordPress ecosystem, there are a bunch of people that are a customer of at least one of these companies if not multiples. Okay. So, because I know Woo, just focus on Woo for a second. Woo Themes itself is an ecosystem. So again, going from the internet, that's an ecosystem, to WordPress, that's an ecosystem, and then even more niche, we've got a Woo Themes ecosystem. If anyone developed a plugin that was specifically targeted at improving the experience of Woo Themes customers, that is a very legit market. I've just said we've got 45,000 paying customers. I mean, you can do the math. If you can just monetize 10% of that, you've got a pretty significant, bunch of traction, bit of traction there. And this is the kind of challenge. Again, this is where my head is going with regards to that: is using the ecosystem that is there to target that, because or the tough part in creating a product is to figure out is it going to sell, is it not going to sell. If you've got a validated market, which all these companies have, then you can specifically target, because they give you more information about who they are. Are they the kind of Genesis customer that likes child theming? Are they a Woo Themes customer that doesn't like child theming? So it's already kind of another variable that's taken out. You don't need to do that kind of guesswork. I had to do a bit of marketing research at the beginning, so now I've got to do, again, my kind of business duty, and I'll take you through all the other ones now. I've spoken about themes, so my kind of business duty is here is kind of, hype things up, do a bit of marketing as well. We're launching WooCommerce in a couple of weeks, week and a half to be exact. Date. And basically, what WooCommerce does is, and I want to show you that, because from all those, Woo Themes, we're unlikely to kind of allow you into the themes part of our ecosystem. That's kind of what we do. But the other sections of our company is pretty much wide open. So for WooCommerce, it literally means developing an extension or a theme specifically for WooCommerce. As I mentioned, if anyone develops a plugin or SaaS app that greatly benefits the Woo Themes community and users and ecosystem, then we promote that. It's healthy for our users. Again, we are monetizing by the themes. So there's all these opportunities. I mentioned Woo Hosting in there. For me, there's no reason why we couldn't launch our own hosting platform, call it Woo Hosting, market it specifically to our customers. There's 40,000 plus potential customers there. So that's kind of my thinking in terms of how you monetize these different users, these different organisms, how you provide products and services that are consumed. And I think therein lies the challenge. I don't think a lot of people that come to the WordPress community and kind of want to make money from it don't realize these things. And I don't think I'm being revolutionary in this. I think this is just kind of traditional economic sense pervading here. WordPress has just created a new marketplace, a new ecosystem, which I think is ripe for the picking. I think all stats show that WordPress is only on the up. I think Google stats from the last year show last year was about 8-9% of index pages powered by WordPress. This year it's up to 14 or 15%. It's ridiculous. That's not going to slow down. This marketplace is only going up. The fact that it's open source, the fact that it's free, works out brilliantly in a recession because people don't have to pay for it. And I think that's me. That's a little coupon code there. So WCCT, 75% off everything on WooThemes.com until tomorrow. And that's me for questions.